Hello, and welcome to another episode of Seedling Sessions. Today I'm speaking to David Booth, Group Technical Sales Manager at Analox, a cutting-edge gas analysis and detection company who are helping organisations across the agri-food sector, from farmers all the way through to retailers like McDonald's. Today we'll be speaking to David about some of their recent innovations in farm tech. Hello, David. Thank you very much for taking some time to speak to me.
Yeah, thank you, Tom. It's a pleasure to be here.
I think it probably might not be a bad idea to kick this one off with a little bit of your background, because obviously you've got a long career and experience in this sector. So it'd be interesting, first off, to hear a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thank you for the introduction. David Booth, as you said, I'm currently the Group Technical Manager for Analox. And after a classic education in nuclear science, I think I decided I had a tongue in my head. And so I moved straight away into sales quite a long time ago now. But it's always been in gas analysis and gas detection. In the recent past, I've specialized in infrared gas analysis, which is very specific for a number of gases. And this introduced me to the first of the applications in the agri sector, mainly supplying equipment to monitor ruminant gas emissions from universities, research institutes around the world, as far away as Australia and India. I now support Analox Group across the new growth areas, including smart farming, applying gas measurements where you're trying to reduce the impact of the methane or the carbon dioxide or even ammonia.
So, just a quick step back then, it'd be useful to understand a little bit about the history of the company. And my understanding is that obviously you're focusing a lot on these agricultural and agri-food use cases, but the organisation itself works across a much broader spectrum of industries.
Yeah, that's right. Originally started in 1981. Our chairman started in his backyard, in his shed, like all great companies, I guess. And we've progressed over the years since 81. We've got our headquarters in Stokesley in North Yorkshire. We've got over 100 staff. We do all the design and manufacturing work is done here, ready for our clients across the world. And we're supported by a US office and a global network of distribution outlets. I've been at Analox about 5 years. And I'm still waiting for my transfer to California to be approved, to Huntington Beach, which is very nice indeed.
So I think what would be really interesting is to kind of dig in, obviously, given the context of the listeners of the podcast, to be really good to try and understand what's the kind of work you're doing in agriculture. Who are the customers? Are you focusing more on farmers at this stage? What are the challenges they're facing?
At the moment, there's an enormous amount of pressure in the agri sector to consider emissions and how they will achieve the future net zero obligations.
Yeah.
Our systems can help by offering a method of measurement, recording, and validation. Animals are going to be legislated against. Specifically, different governments will decide to do things whereby they say to a farmer, you've got to reduce your methane output coming from your farm. And there's going to be methods, but all this has to be validated.
Technology. It'd just be good to understand with the specifics of where Analox. I mean, have you got any case studies, for example? I mean, are you working directly with farmers at the moment, or is it more at an academic level with the likes of SIUC? What are the specific areas of farming that you're mainly working in?
Until recently, I guess the basic markets that we've been in is working with the institutes and the universities, specifically on research centres where we've supplied significant gas analysis systems to cover a wide range of applications, specifically in the animal sector.
And has that been, and so obviously the presumption there is that that's methane, and has that been both with livestock housed and out in the field, or is it predominantly been housed livestock?
It's been in both areas. We've worked with both SRUC and also Aberystwyth University, for instance, and
Yeah.
they have done a lot of their work in the field.
Well,
Yeah.
I guess the question for me, and this is going to sound very naive, given my background working with Agri-Epi Centre, but I've always wondered how do you take accurate methane measurements, even with the high tech cutting edge sensors that you've got out in a field? It's a question that's I've always been keen to ask someone with your experience. It makes sense to me how that works in a housed environment. How does it work out in the field?
The infrared sensors that we manufacture specifically, both the high performance variety, the GFC sensor, uh, have always been developed for an industrial application. So they've always been designed to be able to be taken out in the field. For many years, the same technology has been used for somebody to climb a chimney stack and measure chimney stack emissions. It's a change of gas, but it's no difference in the technologies. And the original design for the high performance GFC sensor came about from British Gas back in the 1990s, saying they didn't want to take a 45 kilo ton of metal up the side of the stack to make gas emissions. They wanted a portable one
Yeah.
that weighed less than 6 kilos.
And obviously, I the idea of measure to manage is central to a lot of this stuff. When it comes to kind of livestock GHG emissions, what if you're able, where is this data helping? Is it allowing you to advise stockmen and producers on or researchers on different kind of livestock management techniques or different feeds? What point is this kind of data on GHG emissions around livestock used?
At the moment, the way the market is developing, specifically with the need to meet net zero arrangements, farmers are going to be asked to reduce the methane by different means, whether it be feed additives, whether it be selective breeding, and other aspects of nutrition.
Yeah.
And the way forward is some very much like the carbon credit schemes of 10 or 15 years ago, where people were told to measure emissions from a chimney stack, perform some reduction measures on reducing what was going out the stack, and they effectively created carbon credits by the differential between what they originally were emitting and what they now emit. And very much the same pattern may emerge as the years go by with methane from ruminant animals, is that a farmer may well be told to say, right, this is your normal pattern with your breed of cattle or breed of
Yeah.
sheep. And then what happens is we come along and do some fairly easy measurements from the feeding hood or the milking parlor, and then we go away and the farmer starts using a new additive or something else that he may come across, and then we come along again and take another measurement to say, oh look, this farmer has reduced his emissions by 20%, 30%, or whatever it is. And that provides a mechanism by which the farmer can actually achieve some cashback, some formula that would allow him to say, look, I'm doing my job for reaching net zero, therefore you pay me. I'm having to spend X amount of money extra to achieve this. So I think I should be paid a little bit. And those carbon credits can be sold anywhere in the world to other farmers, to industry in general, because if a farmer takes out some of the carbon coming out from his farm, he's able to sell it. And that is still currently traded. I think the last trading event I looked at, it was selling for about €100 per metric ton of CO2.
Yeah, it's an interesting market, and it'll be interesting to see how that develops over the coming years. Yeah, the MRV. We've actually kicked off relatively recently with a really interesting project with one of our satellite farmers at the Kaiapoi farms, who are doing a project around ultra low emission sheep, which is a genetics project for sheep emissions. So that'll be an interesting one if we've not already put you in touch with them from a measurement point of view. So obviously, livestock's the obvious use case with this. I'm presuming that there's also some use cases around arable and crops and horticulture as well.
Yeah, the one extra on animals is obviously animal health. And farmers and producers are always looking for new methods of keeping their animals safe and understanding when and if they become ill or diseased or whatever it is. And again, smart sensing and smart farming lends itself to gas analysis in these areas.
Mm.
I did some work a few years ago with measurement of acetone, which everybody knows as used to be nail varnish remover. But acetone is the natural product the animal produces and can appear in milk. And if it gets too high, then that is a good indication of some ill health on the animal. And so the animal can be taken out of use, treated, and brought back to use much quicker. So again, keeping the production going. In in other areas like arable, the use of fertilizers across the land is always uh, an opinionated sector where people say, oh, I can just throw fertilizer here, fertilizer there. But as we all know, the water industry suffers from overuse of fertilizer,
Hmm.
but also the use of fertilizer on land allows the escape of another greenhouse gas, which has been in the news recently, nitrous oxide. Nitrous oxide comes out of the ground, it's 300 times more potent than CO2 as a greenhouse gas. And so it doesn't take a lot of CO2, and we've got a lot of land, N2O, to come out of the ground. And so people are looking to control the amount of fertilizer and how we fertilize the land. And they're looking at measures of understanding how the nitrous oxide comes out of the ground. And again, our products can be linked into that, can measure down to very, very low levels, which we're expecting from these areas. And so we can, again, advise the farmers. And there's even schemes, I've read schemes where people are actually doing the measurements on farm, measuring the nitrous oxide, and then coming back and averaging out how much fertilizer they really need to put on the land to do exactly the same job without a detriment to releasing too much nitrous oxide.
Yeah, absolutely fascinating. So, how do you and your team work with farmers? Is it directly? Is it through agronomists? How does that work?
That we expect the market to develop really, and possibly we'll be working through the feed additive companies,
Yeah.
farmers cooperatives. I don't think we'll have much direct interest from farmers direct, because they'll come together as a grouping in big areas. I know there's a few large farmers cooperatives which cover vast areas of the UK, and they'll come together and say, look, we're going to offer a service, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And the farmers will share the equipment around the area. Feed additive companies might produce incentives by which they will have equipment and say, look, if you want to use our feed additive, then please, we'll support you in this, and we'll help the farming industry forward with looking at how we can improve all these things.
Yeah, I had an interesting conversation with Rich Thackeray at Map of Ag on this podcast a few weeks back, and they bridged that interesting gap between farmers who are collecting data across all sorts of things, not just GHG, and then the processors and retailers further up the food chain. And of course, and a big motivating factor, which you've already talked about, are these net zero and general ESG reporting, but both kind of at a process and retailer level, of which those organisations are looking for both to support and support from their vast networks of farmers, and I can see how these kind of technologies and being able to record stuff like high quality data collection on GHG and other gases would be very, very helpful indeed.
Yeah, we're looking closely. Some of the gases are very difficult to measure in some cases. Ammonia, as a result of what the animal puts on the land, for instance, it's a very difficult gas to measure, and it loves. It actually loves water, and once you
Mm,
get any water and ammonia together, one just dissolves in the other, and you can't measure the gas, so you don't have an easy understanding of how it's measured. So we're looking at new technologies to make this easier, by a different method. We won't measure direct, we'll measure it in a different way.
okay, yeah. Well, it's very high tech. So what are the big growth areas you see as an opportunity for kind of for both the organisation and also just for general kind of measurement in this area?
We're pushing very hard into the green economy, and we make some assumptions in the agri industry that some legislation is going to come through.
Yeah.
We know New Zealand has already introduced it, and that's simply going to progress around the world. We see that as a great opportunity to collaborate, to work with people like Agri-Epi and all the membership across Agri-Epi. Within our defence sector, that is continuously growing. We've just had the announcement of the American, US, and UK submarine agreement, and that looks to the future. It's not looking to the next 5 years, it's actually looking to the next 50 years. So as a company, we can look forward to that security of where we're going in that sector. It allows us to look at other market sectors. Obviously, ruminant methane reduction is there, and we've spoken
Mm,
about nitrous oxide. But similarly, there's a lot of gases released from things like water treatment facilities, which are unknown, which also affect uh, that sector. And within the green economy, we're expecting a significant opportunity in the shipping sector, for instance. Alternative green fuels are coming through. Uh, Fuels like methanol, which is very easy to produce. It's less of a pollutant once it gets into the water, into the seas, for instance. But it'll require new technologies to keep people safe on board ship because it's a different sort of material, a different gas. It's got different problems.
mm. And I've got to assume that you're not the only players in this market. How do you differentiate yourself to other competitors in this sector?
I think our biggest thing is that our people do care. We've always been involved in the safety industry, the safety of people. Um, Following on to that into the environmental section is an easy step for us. Um,
Yeah.
we've got lots of experts, and we pride ourselves in developing solutions. We recently did some analysis systems for a nuclear power station. Um, they were doing something that's never been done in nuclear power stations before, and it's extended the life of the power station. So we've now extended, a couple of power stations in the UK now will probably run for another 5 or even 10 years, which they couldn't
Hmm.
before. And they had come to us saying, look, give us a solution. And in a collaborative nature, we supported them and helped them. Uh, Any challenge we get from a customer is always going to be our passion. It's one of our strap lines that we use on our website. Um, we want customer excellence. It differentiates us from other people. We want this customer excellence. I think we recently won 2 awards for customer excellence. So the Institute of Customer Services and a Northeast Award as well.
Well, that's always encouraging, and I know that you have an exciting project on the horizon, which unfortunately we can't talk about just at this point. But it would be useful to know, out of our Agri-Epi network and obviously the wider listeners of this podcast, which predominantly includes people, farmers, people in the agriculture sector, and a lot of technology developers and innovators. Who are the kinds of people that you'd be interested to to have a conversation with who might be, they want to reach out?
Obviously, we continue to talk to as many of the university and institutional research centres as we can, but this is going to become more commercial. We're going to have to look for further partners, people in the nutrition and feed additive industries, as well as the consortia of farmers who are going to implement some of the changes that are going to take place. The networking with Agri-Epi is second to none. We had a great introduction at a recent meeting in Telford. We want the collaboration with people. We want to know and try and solve those sort of problems. And we want to share our knowledge.
Absolutely. Well, look, David, it's been absolutely fascinating talking to you. And I think one of the things that I've really taken away from this is a realization of how predominantly this technology is across the entire agri-food supply chain. And as you rightly said, not just on farm, or at retailers, but everything from feed manufacturers. And I'd be really interested to keep abreast of how the technology develops in different areas as we work with you over the coming years. Is there anything else you'd like to add? Obviously, we'll do a sign off after this to swap any details. If anyone wants to get in touch, they can do that via the Agri-Epi Centre.
Yeah, nothing. I've mentioned everything. I think. I think the big part of our business is customer-funded projects. Our customers, as I said before, our customers come to us with their challenges. We investigate and test the most appropriate solutions, and we've got the engineers and the scientists that can actually go out there and look at solutions that nobody's thought about.
That's an interesting insight. Yeah, that's really interesting. Okay, well, David, thank you very much for taking some time to speak to me today. Yes.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure, and maybe I'll talk to you again sometime soon.